1. After 7 years in the restaurant business, something happened recently that has baffled me ever since it happened. I run a small ramen shop in New Jersey. Due to COVID-19, my co-manager and I were forced to cut our staff to me and her to stay open. That means it's down to just us to cook, clean, take orders, keep up with inventory, etc. My co-manager and I need to show up to work by 10 a.m. to be fully prepared for when we open at 11:30 a.m. Usually Thursdays until Sundays are our busiest days, so I always show up a little earlier to help my co-manager out with food prep, since she usually has more prep than I do. I can finish all of my station's prep in 30 minutes or so I can spend the rest of the day helping her stock up for the weekend. So it's Thursday, and I woke up a little earlier because I had a hunch that it would be busier than usual. I arrive at the restaurant at 9 a.m. I finish my prep in 30 minutes, and I'm starting to cut chicken. It was then that I noticed this guy outside pacing back and forth looking inside. There's a place next door where people often go in to cash in their checks, and it's not uncommon for the customers there to notice that there's a restaurant next door. Some people come in and ask for a menu to check out, but that's about it. This guy, however, has a different agenda. I go behind the kitchen, which is an open kitchen in the front of house, to the dishwasher, which has a wall divided between them. So I couldn't see this guy walk in, but I was able to hear the bell on the door ring when it opened. We're closed at the moment, so he could wait a few seconds, right? Then I heard a cowbell. Our open and close sign is a big old pig-shaped sign that makes a cowbell-like sound when flipped over. On top of the sign is an even bigger sign with our opening hours. Confused, I stop what I'm doing and go check out the front, where I see a man standing there looking at the menu. I greet him enthusiastically and he ignores me. I took a look at the open and close sign, and to my utter surprise, he had flipped the sign by himself. By the time I noticed it was too late, he had started to order. I swear you could have seen a big question mark appear over my head at that moment. Here's how the exchange went. "Sir, we open in 2 hours.
Your sign says you're open.
I wasn't the one who flipped the sign.
Well, at this time the sign says you're open, so you should take responsibility and make my order.
Sir, I don't have anything I can make you. The soups aren't heated up. I can't cook any noodles because the water in the noodle machine hasn't heated up. And I haven't even turned the fryer on.
The sign says you're open. Why don't you have anything ready? This is very unprofessional of you."
Okay, sir, I understand the sign says we're open, but did you also take a look at our opening hours? We open at 11:30 a.m., which is 2 hours from now. Then he dropped the bombshell.
"Let me speak to your manager. You've been very rude."
I was annoyed enough already that this guy wasn't listening to me, and the explicit signs proving my explanations. So forgive me for wanting to be a little petty. With a wide grin, though invisible because of my mask, I mustered a "no problem, sir," and picked up the restaurant phone and called myself. My phone rings and I look back at the man and exclaimed, "Silly me, I'm the manager. How can I help you, sir?" It took a moment or two to sink in. Then the man turned visibly pale and tried to hold his ground.
Can I order?"
"Of course, sir, when we open in 2 hours. He quickly left after flipping the sign back to closed. I never did see him in 2 hours, or again for that matter. 2. I live in Vermont, and our governor decided to reopen outdoor dining, with 2 days' notice right as a holiday weekend approached. I work in a very tourist town, and unfortunately had felt bad enough about no one wanting to work on such short notice when we were finally allowed to have holiday weekend off to volunteer to help. I thought that the guidelines Vermont has in place meant that we would be serving locals, as people from out of state are required to quarantine for 14 days after arriving. Nope. I think I served 2 tables of actual locals, which is bad enough. But these people were blatantly bragging that they came up for the weekend because their states are closed. Like, actually bragged about stepping off a plane, and we were their first stop. Like, I think they expected us to be grateful. Actually, I know they did, because they acted like the most entitled, pompous assholes. You could easily tell the locals apart. They were patient, happy to order everything at one time, and understood that with 2 days' notice we have a seriously reduced menu. They wore masks while waiting to make a reservation. Most reservations were people walking up to the restaurant and making one for 2 minutes in the future. They were the ones that saw we were running around like crazy, because we have no organization with going from closed to packed with 2 days' notice. The majority of the people though, Boston, New York City, Philadelphia, Florida, all the worst hit areas still with active infections, they were the ones who yelled at us for saying they needed a reservation, cutting us off before we can finish by saying we can book that and get you a table within a short time frame. They were the ones that saw us running and yet refused to say all the things they wanted at once, complaining about lack of options, arguing about our rules of wearing a mask while walking into the building to use the restroom. The stagger ordering when you asked several times if there's anything else they need, while I go walk the quarter mile to pick up their 5-ounce beer, which they will then reorder every single time I jog by. I'm so worried about getting sick. There is no way to keep everything sanitized when you have a skeleton crew and the building is a football field distance from the tables. It's so messed up, and I have spent the weekend absolutely appalled by the lack of responsibility that these people have for others. I think this might be it for my bartending and serving career. In 2 weeks, there will be a lot of sick people in town because most workers can't afford to live in the town they work in. We will see a wide spread. I really needed to vent. I could write a novel with all the stories of craziness that I have seen this weekend. Stay the fuck home if your state is under lockdown. But if you have to travel, for fuck's sake, don't come in the restaurant and brag to your server that you heard Vermont was open so you hopped in your plane, or you drove your ass up so you can have a chance to feel more important than you are by stagger ordering, or creating your own menu and being upset that we don't have the ingredients because there is nothing in our menu even remotely similar to it. I would love to hear about other servers and bartenders, as most of the bartenders will become servers this year. I'm feeling so overwhelmed and anxious, with a renewal of financial anxiety as well, since unemployment is not going to be an option since our boss got that loan and is willing to risk our health to avoid having to pay it back. If you listen to this to the end, I apologize for the word vomit this turned into. Maybe I can sleep now that I got it off my chest. 3. A father and son were sat in one of my booths. They were quiet customers and didn't require much of my attention. I checked on them occasionally while doing my rounds, but they never really needed anything. I was walking by when out of nowhere the father was standing up and screaming in my face. I was stunned. I didn't immediately understand what was going on, and all I was able to catch was 1. Your food is bad. 2. My 7-year-old son is vegan and has been poisoned by your food. 3. I am not paying for this. I looked over his shoulder and his son was sitting at the table with this petrified look on his face, looking straight ahead at the wall with unseeing eyes. He looked like he was in shock because he sat totally motionless as vomit dripped steadily into his lap. After his father was finally finished blaming me for this mess, he yanked his son to his feet and dragged him to the bathroom. He stopped to yell at my boss as his son stood limply next to him with that 1,000-yard stare still etched on his face. I just stood there surveying the damage and contemplating the time it would take to clean this up. I apologize in advance for this being so graphic, but you have to understand the gravity of the situation. I have never seen so much vomit in my life. Actually, I don't think most people have. I'd even challenge a nurse to this one. There was an inch-thick layer of vomit all over the table that was slowly dripping onto the floor. The seats at the back of the booth were also covered in sick. Oddly enough, I don't remember the man having any of it on him, but the child was covered in it. I was considering quitting when another waitress came up to me after hearing all the commotion and said, "It's okay, dear, I'll help you. We'll do this together." She was a saint with 3 kids of her own. Together we cleaned up literal buckets full of vomit. On one of the many trips to get new supplies, my boss pulled me aside and questioned me on what happened. I told him my side of the story and what the father had said to me about his 7-year-old son being vegan. However, the girl that was in charge of keeping the food in stock at the buffet told us that she had noticed the child because he had taken 6 full dinner plates of Shanghai noodles. I am not sure about other restaurants, but our Shanghai noodles were obviously not vegan-friendly, as they had large chunks of pork in them. We all agreed that any normal 7-year-old child wouldn't be able to eat 6 plates of food. Now that being said, I have questions. 1. How many 7-year-old kids are vegans? Was that a choice of their own, or... 2. What kind of vegan thinks pork is acceptable to eat? 3. 3. How many adults allow their 7-year-old to eat 6 plates of food and then assume the food is the problem? We all know the answer is at least 1. To this day, I'm still baffled. It honestly felt like a scam. The man was still forced to pay and yelled the whole time. I do feel really bad for that kid though, and I hope he's okay wherever he is. 4. I had this Karen one day who ordered ribs. It clearly says smothered in our house barbecue sauce on the menu. She orders the ribs. I ask her if everything is okay after a few minutes or if they needed anything. All 3 wanted lemon water refills. I return with water and ask if there's anything else. They're fine, they say. A few minutes later, the lady with the ribs is waving her arms and motioning for my attention. I go to the table and she's like, "This sauce is too spicy. Why is this spicy sauce all over my ribs?" I proceeded to tell her it comes with sauce on and that it's written on the menu. Although it wasn't spicy at all, it was barbecue sauce. Then she proceeds to tell me it's burning her mouth and inedible. I ask her if she wanted me to take back her rib and get her a new rib without sauce. I even suggested our other sauces that don't normally come on our ribs. But I could have got the chef to make an exception. This meal is $29.95. It comes with a half rack of ribs, home fries, garlic bread, coleslaw, and she added dressing and gravy to her fries, so another $5. All of the food has been half or over half eaten by now, including the ribs. She says, "I didn't see that on your menu. Show me, and it's ruined my whole meal. A new rib wouldn't make it okay. My mouth is burning. I'd like a whole new meal to go, or a full refund." So I already know I'm not getting a tip at this point from her attitude. I get the menu and show her where it says the sauce is on. She dismisses it. I tell her I'm very sorry, but no, we can't replace the whole meal, because it's clearly written on the menu that the sauce is on, and that is what she ordered. I offer another rib again, and she declined and asked to speak to the manager. I fill the manager in. He's at the table with a menu explaining the same thing I already had. This fucking asshole woman points to the menu and says, "Right there it says smothered in our house barbecue sauce. That's why I told her I wanted my ribs without sauce. Your waitress made a mistake with my order and refuses to fix it," while being very rude. All the while with her head shaking in disappointment with this bitchy look on her face. I looked her in the face and called her a liar, told my manager to have fun dealing with her and went outside to smoke. My manager, although he had witnessed the entire interaction of me getting the menu, to have to show her it said sauce on, apologizes like a dummy and comes to an agreement with her that she can have a 50% discount on her meal. I was ready to forget about her and move on, but as I'm walking by their table with other customers' drinks, one of the other ladies calls out to me by snapping her fingers in the air. I drop off my drinks and go to that stupid table again. The woman says in an extremely loud and annoying voice, "These fries are swimming in gravy. There's way too much gravy on these fries. I can't eat these." She ordered a small fries with gravy. Had about 6 fries left, like $3.49, along with her free lemon water. I'm like, "I'm sorry, did you want me to get some new fries for you with less gravy?" No, she wants a refund too, and goes on to say how unprofessional and bad at my job I am. The other woman joins in to verbally abuse me and berate me, saying, "If I had your attitude, I would never be a waitress. You aren't fit to work with the public," and exclaiming to each other how rude I am. At this point, I'm ready to start swinging on the inside, but continue to keep my cool, though my tone was completely telling them to fuck off. I say, "You can get a refund at the front when you're leaving, and I hope you have a nice day, wonderfully friendly ladies, and I hope I'm not working the next time you return." I swear from the look on their faces you would think I had told them I was going to kill their children. Mouths wide and eyes popping, they were stunned. I left the table. For the last 10 minutes they were at their table. As I was walking around the restaurant, I hear these women talking loudly about me, saying, "Look at her, she doesn't have a clue how to behave," and "How does she not get fired?" etc. All I can do is ignore them. They go to the front to pay their bill, or what was left of it after all their complaints, and continue to talk about me to my manager, who's profusely apologizing until they finally leave. Worst table to this day. I never wanted to fight a customer or customers until them or since them. Just kidding, but they really were horrible. They didn't leave a tip. 5. Hey y'all. I've had some pretty bad managers in the various jobs I've had, but this guy really took the cake. This also happened over a year ago, so I've been trying to let it go. The restaurant that this story occurs in is part of a small southern sports bar chain, the kind of place where the main bar takes up about half to 3/4 of the sit-down dining room. At the time, I had been working there about 7 months, long enough to know what I was doing, and since the place had a terrible turnover rate, practically a veteran. The GM didn't seem to care though, as every time we worked at the same time, he looked for ways to put me down, say my work was terrible, and how I should pay the restaurant for such and such reasons out of my tips. That day, I had been working a double shift. I had been on my feet since 10 a.m. and was ready to go home. My table had been sitting for about 15 minutes, and I was waiting on their appetizer of fried pickles. I saw the ticket for the order, and a plate of the pickles sitting under the heat lamps all ready to go. I asked the guy who was plating if I could have the order, as it was the only fried thing up on the line. He yelled at me to leave him alone, and as we were just getting off a rush, I let it be. I took the table's main entree orders and put it through the system. The appetizer was already done, so I didn't see the harm in having the food prepared. At this time, the GM has finished walking around the restaurant. He's hovering over my shoulder, asking why I'm not taking care of my table. I explained that I'm waiting on their appetizer, but I'll go see if they would like a drink refill. When I returned, the pickles were gone, but my table didn't have their order. No other ticket had the same order, but my ticket had been thrown away. I asked the fellow server in the same area if they knew where it went. By now, my table has gotten their entrees, and they're pissed that they never got their pickles. I apologize, and head to the kitchen to ask what happened. That's when the GM walks around the bar, holding my table's plate of fried pickles. He claims that he was trying to deliver it, but couldn't find the table. He was on the other side of the restaurant, where he said this and some pickles and dipping sauce were missing. Son of a bitch ate my table's food. He then went on to say that he stopped by my table already and wanted to know why they got their main meal before their appetizer. Peeved, I explained how I waited for the order, but the main meal finished before the fried was done, basically avoiding calling him out. But he wasn't satisfied. He went over to the table with the eaten food and asked them if they still wanted it. Obviously they said no and wanted it off their bill. This table was already upset when they sat down, long wait time, but this sealed the deal of me getting little to no tip and a bad review. My GM, however, was not done. He threw the pickles away, took it off the bill, but still tried to get me to pay for them, because apparently it's my fault that they weren't made and delivered on time. Thankfully, a different manager cashed me out and didn't make me pay. The table also ended up leaving me a 2% tip, so I'm really glad I wasn't stiffed. Speaking with my coworkers a few days later, they mentioned that he's done that to them before as well. He's taken their table's food and eaten it as a snack on multiple occasions. He's at least 7 feet, overweight, and appears to be eating at least half of the time. So this happened more often than we might have known. And since he's the GM, nobody can really confront him about it, even the other managers. This wasn't the only time this GM nearly made me lose a tip and/or pay for someone else's actions. But it continues to stick around in my mind because of how ballsy it was. To eat my table's food, ask them if they still want it, and try to make me pay for it. I'd almost be impressed if it didn't piss me off at the same time. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Spinning Plates, number 98. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use and sent in stories for use in this video. Okay, where does this put us? Saturday, you guys get this? Sorry, I'm a little messed up with my timing. Sleep schedule got messed up again. Did have it sorted, then it got messed up again. No reason, just happened. I've got to force myself to go to bed at a reasonable time in future. I'll fix it again though. Now, regarding streams this weekend, if there are streams, they'll be working streams. I'll be recording stories and the like. So no gaming, but I will possibly be about for a bit of a chit-chat in between working, if anyone would like to stop by and keep me company as I work. Oodles of work to be done, self-imposed really, but it'll be worth it in the long run. Okay, and with that, that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.